Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Siegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Bittner and Ash Paulson to discuss some new details from Nintendo's financial meeting. So let's get started. Alright, hey guys, that sounded really boring right there. But, so Nintendo did have a financial meeting like a couple weeks ago, and there was a Q&A as part of that, which was fully translated into English from Nintendo. And I read through basically the whole thing, and although there's nothing like earth-shattering in there were some interesting details to some degree, you know, on a lot of Nintendo's upcoming initiatives that would be fun for us to talk about. So let's go and dive in right here. So even though this isn't an E3 predictions video, that'll be coming up soon, they did touch on a little bit about E3, or more specifically what won't be at E3, which includes Project NX, no quality of life, and no mobile gaming stuff at all, I mean in terms of smartphones. So, yeah, exciting stuff. But he did provide a few more details about Project NX itself, which included reiterating the fact that it won't be a replacement for the Nintendo 3DS or Wii U, and that, you know, he also reiterated they have not lost their passion for video game systems or creating, you know, dedicated video game platforms, which is why they announced it during the mobile initiative. And but he also said a couple of new things too, including that they're taking into consideration various factors, including the playing environments that differ by country, which I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And also that they are internally analyzing what hurdles are involved in lifting region locks, which is incredibly promising, but at the same time could mean absolutely nothing. So,
yeah.
So do you guys have any thoughts, real quick, on NX?
I mean, it's hard to have thoughts at this point because we really don't know anything about it. And I mean, it's interesting that he said that it's not a replacement for the Wii U or 3DS. It's almost like a third system, a third pillar or something like that as far as gaming is concerned.
Like the DS, yeah.
Exactly. I'm not quite sure where they're going with that. But remember, they also announced that for the DS, and it wasn't going to replace the Game Boy line, and yet it became so popular that, well, when's the last time you played a Game Boy game?
Yeah.
So it really, I think, all depends on how popular and profitable this thing is.
Wait, hold on, Derek. Did you just play a Game Boy game yesterday?
Yes, but I mean a new Game Boy game.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a while.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's the Game Boy line is essentially dead at this point, and I'm curious what they're going to do with the NX that it's not replacing it, but yet it's still there. I'm really just curious about details, but we're not going to be getting them anytime soon since it's not going to be at E3.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Iwata is so insistent on the idea that it's not replacing the Wii U is what's most interesting to me, because I think a lot of people have kind of gotten the idea in their head that the NX is Nintendo's next-gen console, and it's going to, in that sense, is going to be the successor to or replace the Wii U, and that seems to not be the case. And I find that interesting because the Wii U, as we all know, isn't really doing that well, and it doesn't seem, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's ever really going to do that well. So the fact that it's not meant to replace the Wii U makes me wonder what their long-term plan for the Wii U is and how the NX fits into that. Because, you know, I think a lot of people did assume, well, this is the next thing and this is going to succeed where the Wii U failed. But that seems to not be the case. Because they're still, you know, even going into 2016 and 17 and beyond, they're treating the Wii U as if it's its own pillar. Which doesn't really add up when you think about the Wii U's declining sales and overall lack of movement in the marketplace. So I think I'm just more interested in anything than in seeing how the NX kind of fits along with the Wii U.
Yeah, well, it is interesting because it does sound like they're taking that pillar approach. And a lot of people, have presumed it would be a replacement for, the Wii U, because the Wii U, of course, is their worst-selling system so far, or, you know, home console.
Right.
With that said, though, the Nintendo 3DS is much older than the Wii U.
Sure.
And it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, I feel like. So I've always thought that it would be a replacement for the 3DS, and I wonder, could they even really make a home console, like, as a third pillar, for lack of a better term right now, that didn't just automatically replace the Wii U? You know? Like, how could they create, I mean, I don't know, but maybe they could, but could you create another home console device that wouldn't automatically be the Wii U successor, or replace it outright?
I mean, I guess it's hard. I guess it depends on what its relative power is. I mean, if they talked about space control and taking into account different standards of living, in various countries, and that makes me wonder if it's going to be what some people have already speculated, which is kind of like a handheld console hybrid.
Right.
That you can play in a console on a TV if you have a lot of room, or if you don't, you can play just as a handheld. And if that's the case, the focus might not be on power as usual with Nintendo, but more on adaptability, which means that power-wise, we may not be looking at a system that's actually much more powerful than the Wii U, if it is at all.
Yeah.
It's hard to say if they're going to be focusing on true next gen power, and to be honest, that's not what they're known for, or if they're going to be focusing on again, adaptability and innovation and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's sort of the sense I got, where it's more like maybe not its own like a. That's the same sort of thing where it goes back and forth between a handheld and a console, but also maybe interact with the Wii U and 3DS in some way to kind of create that third pillar, and maybe even just be that central hub for all of their different things, where it can work with the mobile stuff, it can work with the quality of life stuff, and it's just sort of that all-in-one box that just can do all these different things, but is not necessarily dedicated to just one. But that's sort of the speculation that we're not really sure what they could do, or even if that's a good idea,
Yeah, it's I don't know, the whole thing's weird, because even though I was just arguing, how could they release something and have it not be a replacement for the Wii U, I'm also going to argue against that and be like, that doesn't really matter, because I mean, they did the exact same thing with the DS. Like, it wasn't a GBA replacement, despite literally having GBA hardware in it and being better in every way.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think that means much. It sounds like it sounds like they're hedging their bets, right? The DS was a bet, it paid off, but it ended up being a failure. They always had the Game Boy line to fall back on.
Sure.
So this very well could be a new console, home console, and them like trying to sidestep it being, an even more a bigger failure than the Wii U was. Yeah, who knows? I don't know. I feel like I feel like it's a little bit too soon. But by the same token, they probably do want a home console that sells something,
right,
compared to the Wii U. So who knows? I really don't know. But the whole country thing is pretty interesting. And if you look at it in the terms of being a console, that does make sense in that the home console market seems to be really slowing down in Japan, whereas in the US it seems to actually be pretty vibrant. Like the PS4 is doing, as far as I know, great here. Xbox One less so, and of course the Wii U much less than that.
Yeah.
But whereas in Japan, like it seems like the home console market has definitely fallen wayside compared to the mobile market. So
yeah, it certainly has.
But yeah, I guess if they're taking into consideration everything, maybe it is some kind of hybrid device. Which I think would make sense. Like I think it'd be awesome if you had the device, like basically with the Wii U in reverse, right? You take the gamepad with you; it has all the hardware in it, so you can play it wherever you want. Then you stream it to the TV when you come back home.
Right. It would just have to be a lot smaller than the Wii U gamepad is
currently.
A lot smaller.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But that sounds great, though. It's an idea that's sort of been worked with, where you can sort of just take it anywhere, but you've always been sort of tethered to the TV with the Wii U. Like the way my apartment's set up, I can't take the gamepad wherever I want, so I'm invariably going to just play it in front of my TV. But if they can have it like where I take my 3DS, and just I can either, if I'm out, I can just play it on that system or that screen, or if I play it at home, I can just have it onto the TV. That's great. I love that sort of back and forth that can happen, where whatever your setup is, you're in good shape to play these games and have fun with them.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the other thing here is he mentioned that they're looking into the considerations for what it would mean to get rid of region locking. And I'm not quite sure like what all is involved there. I mean, seeing as how there are almost no third-party games for Nintendo, like so it's all games they already have the rights to. So I don't know how complicated this issue can really be.
Well, I think to me it sounds like code speak for we're a Japanese business and we have to really consider every angle and think about things for a million years before we actually make a decision. So that's exactly what that sounds like to me. I have a little experience dealing with that myself based on past jobs. So that sounds exactly like what that is to me.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head right there.
Yeah.
But it is good that at the least it sounds like they're considering it, because it's so weird that they went backwards with the 3DS, because before then every handheld they'd made was you could use it in any territory with any games you wanted. Then they went back on the 3DS, whereas the consoles have always been region locked. But we are like becoming increasingly, global, economy, right? Like people move around, travel. It just makes sense to not region lock it. I feel like it sucks if you have a 3DS and you're traveling, you want to pick up a game, you can't. Like, you can't play it under 3DS if you're in Japan, for instance.
I mean, there's a reason Sony doesn't region lock. I mean, it's...
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people enjoy and appreciate that kind of freedom, and really, we should have it.
If Sony, the king of proprietary hardware BS, can make a non-region lock device, why can't Nintendo?
That's a very good question, and one that I would direct you to Mr. Iwata for.
I wish someone at the investor meeting literally asked it in that exact same way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know they have to be thinking it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Definitely.
Yeah. I did want to address something you said really quick, Andre, earlier about the 3DS being long in the tooth, and actually one of the questions addressed that. And you probably know what I'm talking about, but the 3DS actually obviously is getting a little old. But the investor who asked this question noted that there weren't any significant prospective R&D costs increasing over the next couple of years, which would suggest that they're not necessarily in active development on a successor to the 3DS, which I find particularly interesting because, as you said, it is getting kind of long in the tooth. And I'm wondering if it is time for them to really be focusing their resources on a new handheld.
I actually didn't see that question, but that is pretty interesting because you would think, I don't know their exact, financials or what their typical R&D bump is. I imagine there was, we did know that they started they merged the hardware or the hardware team. So there is the console and handheld are now, I believe, a single team. They wanted to simplify the entire process. It doesn't mean they're making a single system or anything. But I do wonder if that has affected maybe how they budget R&D, maybe? Because you would think there'd be a bump for, of course, Project NX.
Right.
But maybe that is it. Maybe they aren't planning a 3DS successor. I would be surprised, because I feel like even though the 3DS is comparatively doing, fine, especially compared to the Wii U, there is an argument they could just sit on it, keep writing out the 3DS, make more money on it without investing further in R&D. But conversely, the 3DS is getting older, and I wonder if it would be worth it or positive for them to maintain that mobile momentum by making another system, another handheld in which before they burn out, before the 3DS completely peters out, and there's less momentum moving into the next generation. I don't know though.
Right. Well, I mean, it seems reasonable to me to think that certain third parties or just in general the industry would want them to move forward with better tech in a handheld. So as not to fall too far behind the curve in terms of what's possible on a handheld gaming system. Yeah,
it could be that Project NX actually plays into all of this. If it is some kind of weird hybrid thing, maybe it actually functions as both systems, and that would explain, the comparatively mild bump apparently for R&D.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this whole situation, but it is an interesting balance. Do you want all the steam to run out with the 3DS and nobody cares about it anymore before you have a new system? Or do you want to carry that momentum? And as we've seen before, a loss of momentum can be devastating, as we saw with the Wii U. So I have a feeling that Nintendo has to realize this at this point. So maybe this is why the NX is coming out, so they can keep that momentum going. Maybe not replace these systems, but have something new that could potentially replace them as they keep going. And I don't know. I think it really does all come back to the NX, whether or not what's going on with the 3DS, what's going on with the Wii U. It could honestly be a replacement with both. And you said there's no indication that combining the two development teams for handheld and console could create a singular console, a singular system. That doesn't really negate the possibility of it happening. It actually seems all the more likely, at least having a console and handheld that work better together, at the very least.
Who really knows what they're doing? They have just said they're doing something, something new with NX.
Right.
But it does really sound like they're hedging their bets here. If it's a complete failure, they can always fall back on their typical lines, whatever the next, the 4DS and then the Wii U 2 or whatever. Hopefully it wouldn't be called that.
Oh, God, I hope. But, it'll be called the new Wii U. Or,
Jesus.
Or just the new
true.
Nintendo Wii or something.
God, you're right, actually. That would be the case. Oh, my.
I'm calling it now, new Nintendo Wii. That's it.
But it sounds like we will be finding out about that next year, which really isn't that far away. So I'm actually really excited to see what that is, even if we won't learn anything about it at E3. Now, something else, as I mentioned, we'll be finding out about at E3 is going to be more about their mobile games. Now, we did find out what kind of plans they have in mind to some extent for this, and that is the fact that by the end of their their upcoming fiscal year, being March 2016, I believe they will have 5 games released for mobile platforms, including one by the end of this year. And Iwata talked a little bit about, their strategy for this, and that's they've looked at the current mobile gaming landscape, particularly in Japan, which apparently is heavily dependent on whales. And that is where you have a very small user base, but they put a ton of money into the game. Just people buying like all kinds of DLC or content for a game, and make tons of money off just a very small amount of people. Nintendo apparently has no interest in that at all, which is awesome for any number of reasons. Like they're a family-friendly company. They can't really appeal to children in that way, and they also mentioned too they aren't looking at this purely as like making money in the short term. Like it's part, and this actually ties into a lot of their upcoming stuff they've announced, like working on theme parks, for instance. And they're more focused on the long term, which is broadening their IP base, like getting more people exposed to the games. And mobile's like a huge part of that, because everyone has a mobile phone these days, and that's a huge market they want to appeal to. And as part of that, they're trying to figure out, it sounds like one of the challenges they're working on is what kind of games to make for these platforms, because they want to design games, it sounds like, that people come back to day after day after day. It's not something that comes out and you forget about immediately. They want they want to ride them out in the long term. It almost sounded like they want each game almost to be like its own platform, maybe? I don't know, maybe...
Yeah, it kind of does sound like that, actually.
Right? Yeah. I mean, so basically, like, it sounds like to me, what they want to aim for is like an Animal Crossing-like experience. I mean, not necessarily in that same genre always, but something like that keeps coming, gives you incentive to keep coming back day after day. And, hopefully keeping those games on top of the charts, which he mentions is pretty important for mobile games. Otherwise, there's so many mobile games, if you're not in those top charts, you might as well not exist at all. So, I thought that was really interesting, and how, just how focused they seem to be. Like, they've clearly put a lot of thought into this, and that's great. Because I don't play many mobile games for many of the reasons he mentioned, actually.
Right.
So, yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on any of that, or?
I don't play many mobile games either, so it's hard for me to really say the landscape. Like, when I first got my iPhone, I actually did invest, okay, let's see about all these mobile games everybody was talking about. And I got so bored so quickly. Yep. It's just mindless little things. There was a couple bright spots here and there, but nothing that really carried my interest at all. And I was wondering, why are people raving about these things? And I quickly realized it's all because it's mostly flash in the pan stuff. And to see Nintendo...
And he mentioned that. He's like, a ton of mobile games come out, you play for 20 minutes, and you never think about it again.
Exactly. Remember when Angry Birds was the biggest thing in the world.
Yep,
so
tiny birds, anything with birds, right?
Flappy Bird.
Tiny Wing, or whatever it was called, Flappy Bird, I don't know.
Yeah.
And to see Nintendo look at that strategy and no, this is not a sustainable strategy. We're going to try something else to make it more sustainable, keep people coming back. That is interesting to me. It doesn't seem like they're going to nickel and dime us either. And I think Nintendo's also built up a sort of a level of trust almost with most of their DLC efforts, and even just transaction efforts when it comes to adding stuff to their games. So I'm curious to see where they're going to go with the mobile thing, their mobile games idea. Whether they're going to rely on new old IPs, invent new IPs, or what exactly they're going to do with it, but I'm cautiously optimistic and at the very least curious.
Well, just to play devil's advocate here, though, I mean, there's an extended section in the investors meeting report where Iwata specifically talks about the fact that in order to have an extended mobile game platform like that, they are looking aggressively into ways of how to continuously monetize customers in terms of people who keep coming back. But it's not just enough for them to keep coming back to the same game. They have to keep spending money as well. So, even Nintendo isn't above looking into ways to monetize their extended mobile game platforms, because they basically have to. But Iwata does talk about that at length. That they're looking into ways to ensure that customers keep coming back not only to play the game but to spend money on playing the game. So that is that is on their mind. That is on their bottom line. So it is worth mentioning that.
No, yeah, it totally is, and that's something they're going to have to do. I mean, a theme they kept coming back to, or something that kept coming up throughout the Q&A is, a lot of these changes we're seeing from Nintendo, and there's a lot of them, are a direct result of the previous fiscal year where they didn't meet their targets, and they had to figure out, how they wanted to meet those targets moving forward. And Mobile is going to be a part of that. And he mentioned this year it won't be, the games will be coming out slowly in the fiscal year. It won't be a huge portion of this, of 2016. But moving forward, it will increasingly become a part of Nintendo. And yeah, so I mean, they will. So it will be very interesting to see how they're going to monetize these games in such a way that still appeals to their core demographic, without like offending them, and by that I mean like the parents, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like I was just reading an article yesterday about how some kid like charged $11,000 to his mom's credit card in the game.
I read that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And that's something like Nintendo cannot have those kind of headlines coming out about their games. That would not be good.
Because as you said, they built up a certain trust.
Exactly.
With their reputation, with their DLC. So they specifically, I think, have to be very wary of not breaking that trust.
And we did find out recently that they are putting, I forget his name, but the director of Mario Kart.
Yes.
He's in charge of the mobile division.
Yeah.
Which is encouraging. That I mean,
Yeah.
he has experience of making good games and ones that that have that function as full games. Like they aren't, they haven't. Mario Kart 8 is the first game of DLC from that team, I think. So
right.
It's hopeful, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But it is a very fine line that Nintendo needs to walk across, because people are going to be judging them harshly on this whole mobile thing.
Oh yeah, they are. They already are.
Yeah, which is, I mean, again, it's just kind of that ridiculous cycle of Nintendo gets judged so much more harshly for anything than anyone else does. I mean, they can do any of the same things that any of their competitors do, but people are going to really be scrutinizing them a lot more, which has to be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I part of it is like Nintendo is such their own thing.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, it is weird. They are very much their own company, so distinctly Nintendo.
And they do go out of their own way to be noticed as such. So
Yeah.
in one sense, they kind of have it coming.
It's sort of like the Disney thing. Like Disney
Yeah.
gets judged so much more harshly because of that as well. So
That's true as well. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Disney and their rival being Universal, we got a few new details about how this whole theme park thing came together. And I know you haven't even talked about this at all, Ash, on our discussion, so it'll be good to get your thoughts on this in general. But, so as it turns out, this whole theme park idea actually came up first last year in April when Iwata visited the US, which by itself is encouraging. Like, this isn't like a last-minute thing that just came together. It's something they've been working on this for some time. And in fact, Universal, or Iwata said that Universal already had some extremely detailed plans for, for what could come of this so-called Nintendo Land. And he went on to mention that this whole thing started right after they had finished building both Harry Potter lands, or the development process thereof at least. And as most people know, like those are like some of the most immersive lands and theme parks anywhere really. Like a lot of people think like that's like one of the high marks of theme parks. Like they nailed working with an existing IP to bring that world to life. And this all sounds incredibly encouraging for me, at least, especially with the fact that Universal has been meeting with some of Nintendo's game creators, I believe, such as Miyamoto, for instance, that they're working so closely together on this. Like, it sounds like, this is another step for Nintendo in broadening their IP range into new markets, attract new people, and just keep it, like, their properties in the public mind. So, I mean, everyone already knows how I feel about this. I think it's an awesome idea. I'm super stoked. And hearing this just makes me even more excited, because it suggests something of a larger scale than something on a much smaller scale, which is, I think, what some people feared. And it still could be true, but I really hope this is, something. I'm hoping we're seeing some huge, like, high-budget attractions here.
Ironically, actually, I just got back from around a 2-week trip in Japan.
You were actually in Universal when this news came out.
Yeah, I was at Universal Studios Osaka when this news was handed down, and I had actually just been talking to some friends there about how much I would gladly pay for Universal Studios tickets to go to a Nintendo-themed, attraction.
Right.
In a second. And because I'm not a big theme park fan, but that would get me to go in a second. And so, ironically, when I was talking about that, that's pretty much when the news is handed down. And like you, Andre, I could not be more stoked. I'm so thrilled about this, and there's so many cool things they could do with the theme park attraction for any of Nintendo's IPs. I mean, I agree with you about Harry Potter's Wizarding World. I'd never been, and I remarked actually to a friend that it really does feel like you're walking onto the set of the movie. It's crazy how immersive it is.
Right.
And there's so much they could do with any Nintendo world to that end, and that it just makes me so, like, it makes me excited in the way a kid would be excited. Like, I want to go. I want this to be a reality already.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been saying for years, like, why hasn't this happened yet? I'm still, like, amazed it's actually happening. But it's Nintendo, and this makes so much sense for them.
Yeah.
How are they actually doing it? How are they following through on this?
It feels like they should have already done this a long time ago.
You know, it's definitely encouraging that they've been meeting with Universal and working so closely with Universal that it's not going to be just a half-assed product where you slap their name across, throw up a couple rides, and there you go. No, this is care is being put into this concept, and Universal has proven themselves thanks to Harry Potter and a lot of their other rides, which I hear are incredibly immersive. It's hard not to be excited and want to get down there and visit this because this is quite huge. This is something a lot of people will go out of their way to try to get to because it's just sort of that fulfilling that childhood dream.
I mean, it's ridiculous how much money they're going to make on this. Like, we've already seen how well Amiibo are doing. I'm sure you saw the merchandise when you were there at Harry Potter World.
Oh,
Ash.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you can buy magic wands, you can buy butterbeer. I believe, like, this could be completely wrong, but I would not be surprised. But I think I was reading something like they made back their investment in Harry Potter based on butterbeer alone.
You know, it makes sense because frozen butterbeer, incidentally, is delicious.
Is it not amazing?
It is delicious.
So good.
Yeah.
You two need to shut up because I've never had it and I keep hearing how wonderful it is.
Oh, dude, Derek, man, you have no idea how good this is. Like, it's mind-blowing good, man. Like,
it is. It's intense. Like, it really changed my perception of how drink should taste.
Hey,
like,
Ash,
it's really good.
I think we should talk a little bit more about how awesome butterbeer is and how Derek hasn't had it yet.
I think we should just change the whole name to Butterbeer Explain. I think that should just be the new name.
It is so good.
I'm gonna, like when we ride a roller coaster, I'm gonna take off the belt and make you guys fall out.
Wow, man,
that's pretty dark. What did Butterbeer ever do to you, Derek?
Well, it's a good thing we'll have our Harry Potter brooms on which we can just ride out there.
Man, what did Butterbeer ever do to Derek?
Right? Jeez.
Man.
But, like, no, seriously, like, along those lines, like, given how well Amiibo has done, like, the merchandising potential alone, like, is just through the roof with this. Like, I mean, there's so much potential here. Like, we talked a little bit before in our previous discussion, like, having, like, Zelda potions, and they can serve it in, like, little, what's the word for it? The witches.
Bottles, like the glass bottles.
Yeah, like glass bottles, exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could do, there's so much you could do. It just makes so much sense, and I'm excited to see what all comes of this.
Well, literally, all they would need to do is just print every rare Amiibo en masse, and then only sell them at the theme parks.
Right.
So people would have to buy a ticket to go even have a chance at buying the rare Amiibo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Can you imagine?
I could actually see them doing that. Ironically.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, like theme park exclusive Amiibo.
Yeah.
I could totally see that happening.
Oh, God,
yeah.
I hate that I can put that out in the universe.
Yeah, well, it's good to be prepared that probably will be the case.
Yeah.
So I guess the only other thing they want to really touched on some meaningful degree is Club Nintendo. And he mentioned how, like, all their services up to this point, like Miiverse and Club Nintendo and whatever else, were all designed without smartphones in mind. Granted, I don't know how they accomplished that, seeing those smartphones have been around for a while. But none of those services were designed to work together with each other. And that's where this partnership with DNA is coming through, in which they're trying to design a platform that can bring them all together. Because he mentions how now, like, the internet is basically its own marketing tool. Like, people, like, or social media specifically. Like, people talk to each other about games now, and that's a great way of, that's how people find out about stuff now. Oftentimes more through that than through conventional marketing. I mean, look at Minecraft, right? I don't think they had any marketing budget originally, and that just blew up their word of mouth alone, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Nintendo wants to execute better on, it sounds like. And so I'm curious to see, like, how far they're taking this, but it sounds like they are really embracing the idea of mobile and how it connects to their games. Like, I mean, even outside mobile games itself. Like, it sounds like they're designing a service in which that really brings all their products together under one roof. And I'm trying to envision, like, what that could be. Like, is there going to be, like, a central app in which all your games can connect to, and you can interact with others through it in some way? Like, I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what they're planning here.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I really hope it has something to do with cross-buy in terms of these virtual console games. I mean,
that needs to happen.
Yeah, they've already dabbled in it with stuff like the latest Mario and Donkey Kong, whatever it's called. game, and it's like Mario versus DK9 or something. But they've already dabbled with that, with that game. And Virtual Console cross-buy absolutely needs to be a part of this platform, whatever it is. But you should be able to play. You should be able to buy Super Mario Brothers once and play it across all your devices. That has to be part of it.
It's absolutely true. There's different things they can make how many of us got those Club Nintendo points and then just put off entering in the coins until one other time? And then you have to fill out survey after survey. At the very least, make it a QR code for this new service. Just scan the QR code. There you go. You got your points.
Yeah, Club Nintendo was a mess, just in general.
It really
feel
was.
like. Yeah.
One thing that Iwata did say that kind of intrigued me was that they were thinking about, for example, rewards that are not just based on like codes you fill in, put into a form, but also what you're actually playing. So because everything is going to be interconnected between all their platforms, if you play what I assume he means is you play a lot of Zelda or something, you might be eligible for a specific Zelda themed reward that other people might not be, which I find the idea that you can earn a reward just by playing lots of certain games, it intrigues me. I'm sure the threshold would have to be huge to make operating costs make sense, but still, the fact that you could maybe earn rewards just by playing games naturally like you already would is pretty cool.
So, well, that brings up a good point. Do you think they'd continue with a physical reward program a la Club Nintendo? Because I'm more inclined to think they'd go purely with a digital reward.
That's platform. A good point. They might that might make you eligible for a free Zelda game, Virtual Console game download or something.
Right. Or or maybe some other kind of in-game benefits.
Sure.
I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I don't know, maybe costumes for lack of an imaginative idea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways they could do it. I really don't see them going physical routes because look at the last 2 years with their platinum rewards.
Yeah.
It's probably best to temper expectations for this new service. The best I can hope for really is that it's just easier to use and it's less of a pain. If they manage that, great. They're better than Club Nintendo.
Right.
Well, yeah, what I would like to see them is do something, well, this isn't the best way of putting it, like something more akin to the promise of Xbox Live, right? Like a unifying experience, a unifying online experience. I feel like they have a great base with Miiverse, but I feel like there's so much more they could be doing with it. Miiverse is ultimately a pretty forgettable thing, I think at least. And I think there's something there they could build on. I don't know how exactly, but I think finding new ways of being able to share game experiences with others, I guess, through your mobile platform. I really don't know, but I feel like there's a lot of potential there. Nintendo has barely touched on anything to that degree. Even Miiverse, I feel like they haven't really capitalized on to the extent they could in its current form.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, and as usual with stuff like this, Nintendo's slightly behind the curve, but maybe they'll be the ones to really get it right.
Yeah.
For that reason, so there is definitely a lot of potential here.
So I guess, and speaking of potential, what do you guys just think overall of all this news? Just in general, nothing specific, but what do you think about Nintendo's current direction and? Because I don't think we've seen this much change from Nintendo in years. This seems to be a pretty drastic. They're still sticking to their core values, but they are really branching out.
I think it's refreshing. I think it's nice to see them taking risks and taking risks in different ways. They'll try to go for that innovation, but then they'll ignore all the basic stuff that you think everybody has down at this point. And that's always been a problem with Nintendo. Their focus is always elsewhere. Now it seems like their focus is on things that should have happened or will work better now. I think that now they have that idea of what they want to do. It seems like they've just really taken to heart a lot of the criticisms and other things that they've just had tossed at them throughout the Wii U's lifespan. And I think that it was a wake-up call that needed to happen. And like I said, I'm optimistic. I'm not sold on all these ideas. I think that there's definite ways that all of this could just go wrong, but on paper this looks like a step in the right direction.
I agree. I'm really enjoying this kind of aggressive new Nintendo, and historically Nintendo is at their best when their backs are against the wall. A panicked Nintendo is a great Nintendo, and I always enjoy seeing what kind of crazy things they'll do and what exciting things they'll announce when the chips are down, because that really is when they tend to be at their best. So, I of course don't want them to always be in that state.
Right.
But Nintendo, when they are forced to really come up with something that works, they pretty much always deliver, and they deliver in spades. So this is a very exciting time to be a Nintendo fan, I think. And I think over the next year, we're going to see some really interesting things come out of this whole NX thing and the mobile stuff. And, there are changes coming, but I do appreciate that they're not abandoning their core values and their core business of console games. Like, things are changing, but not too much. This isn't a total transformation that's going to leave fans cold, I think. I think there's just, they have their core business, but they're expanding aggressively alongside that. And I think that's really the best possible thing they could do right now.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, it's exciting because they're finally embracing the ideas that a lot of people have been saying for years that they should be doing. But it sounds like they're going about it in the best possible way. Like, mobile that had to happen at some point. But it sounds like they're doing it right. I mean, granted, we won't know for sure until they actually do it. But everything we've heard from Iwata, it sounds like they are taking the right tact with this. And that extends to everything they're doing, whether it's working with other companies like on theme parks, expanding or working on the replacement of Club Nintendo, and then of course Project NX, whatever that ends up being. It really just sounds like it's weird. Like it seems like they're starting to find their footing. Like they're starting to figure out how this modern world's working, and they're working within it in a very Nintendo way, while staying true to what they've typically done. Now, the really interesting thing to see like how things look like 5 years from now, even, right?
Right.
Like, where is all this going? Will they still be releasing their own systems then? At this point, it sounds like they will, but who knows what the future holds? But I think it is a very exciting time. It seems like they're doing everything they need to in the best possible way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yep.
Alright, well I think that about wraps up for us here. Quite a lot from that.
Yeah.
So, thanks guys for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below, which is a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for maybe more on future financial Q&A meetings and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.